give us a lot of benefits from that. Our export will increase. Our export impact will increase. Our Indonesian industry will be more competitive with the global economy integration, and by working together, they will import their items to us, right? So customers will get a cheaper items by that, and so therefore we can conclude our proposition concludes that by prioritizing the global economic innovation of the domestic industrial protectionism, we could reach the international the global economic market more. We could develop the global economic innovation more, and we can also increase our country's income. We could export our resources. We could do that to get more income from that. We could working together with the international. It could give us more benefits to the economy, to our country's economies, and that's why I'm proud to propose.
Good morning. Now I'll just start my statement with saying how more important the domestic industrial protectionism domestic industrial protectionism is much more important than global economic integrations. I'll just start by saying how weak the Indonesians' economic value is compared to the other countries outside globally, and to say, I'm just going to proudly say, even though it may sound bad, Indonesia has almost absolutely nothing to offer to the world. Now, why is that? I'm just going to start with SDK, or Indonesia. Indonesia still falls behind 7th in rice production compared to Thailand's first rice production. And as the first speaker talked about how exports can save Indonesia's economic value, I'm just going to say there's not a lot of things Indonesia can export. And if I were to compare that to the amount of imports Indonesia has went through, it has created over generational debts, especially their debts with China, their debts with America, their debts with London, England, or the UK, and their debts with most of the Western world. And if Indonesia is to engage in global economic integrations, because of Indonesia's low economic value, Indonesia can easily be manipulated or abused by other countries that have more powerful, that have more political power or more economic power. For example, in America, Joe Biden, being the president of the United States before Trump and before Kamala Harris, he has lied numerous times about the Iran and Iraq and Afghanistan war, about how they have weapons of mass power, such as nukes, bombs, or such weapons. But it turns out America, or Joe Biden, has actually lied about this, which results in an actual national war in Iraq, Afghanistan, towards the Taliban. Now, there's also another example how the Venezuelans, how America infiltrated the Venezuelans against the tyrannical president, and many people of the American social media talk about how America has the habit of infiltrating other countries' businesses using that to their power in order to gain economic power and political power. Now, there's no exception that Indonesia will be affected by this influence by the Americas. And also as another example of how domestic industrial protectionism is much more important. China has tens of thousands of different apps, tens of thousands of different shops of their own domestic businesses, and it shows a lot of increase in economic power of China, but that's because China already has a very large economic power and political power compared to Indonesia, that has much less power. If we were to focus on more global economic integration, it will cost us probably our lives. And Indonesia can't even guarantee that the money is going to come back from its global trades or investments. And for another example, how our vice president talked about bringing up 19 million job applications, but instead they started an alliance with the Americas. Why did they start the alliance with the Americas? Because they knew America had the potential to somehow increase or help Indonesia get their power, but instead it led to more suffering for citizens. And if I were to ask, what has global economic integration has ever brought Indonesia? And for another example, how domestic industrial protection works, having to focus on domestic industries, it has almost the same role as how nationalism works for this country. Let's bring up the example of Lomba, how the young generation of Indonesia band together to help Indonesia free from the conquering of the Netherlands, and it has shown very great and very powerful inspiration for new young generations compared to other countries that Indonesia has no benefits from. That's all for me.
We still have our source is not limited with our sources. We still have our source, and we can export them to the global community so that we could the stakeholder, the government, they could enable the international market to be more wider and for the citizen, we could export our items to the global market so that we could have an feedback
start my statement. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so as the second speaker of the counter side, I would like to strengthen my teammate's statement of the first speaker. So that as we all know, that Indonesia is still a developing countries. They still struggle with many things such as poverty, weak healthcare, poor infrastructure, food insecurity, and unreliable electricity. So we argue that government should prioritize citizens' immediate welfare before investing abroad. Because without a balanced infrastructure or the economy, if we trade internationally or import stuff to the other countries, we would most likely to get little profit by it. So it wouldn't be enough to actually increase the growth of our economy because of that. Next, strong domestic economies require investment in infrastructure, renewable energy, agriculture, and industrial development. So again, we argue countries cannot achieve sustainable development if they neglect domestic productive capacity. So instead of putting global economic integration to prioritize on the international trade and interconnected markets, the government should consider prioritizing on domestic healthcare, on domestic industrial, because they still struggle with poverty, weak healthcare, poor infrastructure, with this many problems from inside the country. How can we guarantee that having to trade internationally will increase their economic growth? When our countries are being neglected by their own governments, with many unemployment rates that's happening because of them putting international trade instead of being focused on domestic industrial. Many people tend to lose their jobs or maybe don't have enough job applications in the first place because the countries only care about investing in international, but Indonesia itself is still having so many problems in the countries with the high rate of poverty, with healthcare or infrastructure, and many things that's happening in Indonesia right now. So we still highly disagree of today's motions that this house would prioritize global economic integration over domestic protections. Because Indonesia itself has many problems that needs to take care of before they focus on international trade. So they need to focus on their own countries before they could focus on trading internationally. Okay, that's it for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Honorable international, globally, yes. Our university course are huge. Our argument explain what the question is that was more strategic and first, our first speaker clearly demonstrated that global economic integration opportunities often provide broader market access, stronger financial performance, and more stable return results compared to relying solely on domestic industry. Many global countries are facing economic volatility and limited industrial diversification and sustainable domestic industrial production. If global economic integration is ongoing within domestic markets, we should work comes to depend on the political conditions, domestic inflation, and instability. Therefore, global economic integration is one of long-term countries in the world for smaller countries. Okay, or our team also demonstrated that the global economic integration strengthens global market position. When global economic integration reflects international countries, stronger financial networks, global partnership, and access to advanced industries and greater influence in international markets. This global developing countries learn from advanced economy, from other countries, and transfer knowledge and technology with other countries and improve national market for other countries. Rather than being economically isolated, global economic integration is one of the global countries such as Indonesia active participation in global economic over 10% of that. Therefore, global economic integration is not about collab. It is strategically strengthening them. Our side benefits for special leader our side benefit first government, secondly citizens, firstly government, secondly citizens, and lastly national economies overall. Citizens benefit because stronger international markets interest them because state revenue, strengthen public finance, and provide long-term economic security. Government also gain more stable federal assets, reduce vulnerability to domestic industry, and greater fiscal flexibility. The proposition side relies on global economic integration involving such as Norway, Singapore, and the unilateral trades have demonstrated that global economic integration strategies can generate long-term returns and shows national wealth growth. For example, Singapore's foreign investment entities such as meanwhile, many developing economies that rely heavily on domestic industry and favorable to limited market growth. International financial institutions such as frequently emphasize the importance of diversification, external business exposure, global economic
countries such as Indonesia should prioritize allocating markets to international for investment over domestic and industrial over domestic industrial international global economic integration.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So first of all, let me introduce myself as the third speaker of the opposition team. My name is Muhammad Penus, and I'm here to strengthen our group. So I will start this off with a question: why should poor citizens wait while governments invest abroad? What that means is, why should we, as a civilian on this Indonesian country, why should we wait? Why should we wait on the governments while the governments doesn't even give a single care about us in the country, and they only care about their connections in the abroad, such as the Western, the Europe, and the furthermore. I can't list all of it, but this is a true fact. And then another question, of course. What proof is there that Indonesia has been growing from global economic integration? And how Indonesia can double the global economics through trades and investments? Well, the answer is, it has brought us nothing. Indonesia has been nothing. Indonesia has been nothing but a parasite in the abroad country. They don't bring any trade people into someone else's country, but instead they keep asking more and more without giving what the other country actually needed. Because of what? Because Indonesia never really has anything to offer in the first place. So that's why international investments mainly benefit the elites, not the poor one, or us being the regular civilian. So large foreign investment portfolios are often controlled by political and financial elites, while the ordinary citizens may not directly feel the benefits. What that means is, the elites and the governments, of course, they could invest more on the abroad, or even they could trade more on the abroad countries. But the regular citizen will not effectively feel the benefits of it. Why? Why you may ask? Because the elites and the governments are keeping the benefits to themselves. So that's why should we, as an Indonesian civilian, why should we get more independent? Instead, we should get more independent rather than wanting help from another country. So it brings us to a flashback of the Rengas Dayton accident, where the youth kidnaps the elder they say that they don't want their country independence from any other country else, that they want it for themselves, and they want it to work for themselves, not were given by the British, not were given by the Western. No, they want it all by themselves. They want it all. So the spirit of that nationalism has a heavy role in the national economic state of Indonesia. So that's why, yes, global connection is amazing. But if no national or domestic growth is happening, then how could we improve as a normal civilian without needing the help of any other countries, right? Since international trade found to focus on the long term with the Indonesia's weak currency and low economy, this would result in the long term of wealth maximization, the diversification, financial stability, and global competitiveness might not be able to be reachable. Instead of focusing on this, government should because instead of focusing on this, the government should prioritize the domestic investment because Indonesia itself is rich with minerals. So what that is?
Our economy is not stable. How do you guarantee that we can improve our domestic economy?
That's a great question, but I will answer that because how we could invest our domestic, right? Well, simply just stop the export. Just stop the export. Not fully stopping the export, but give it like a rational ratio between the people that are really in need instead of what the other people in other countries needed. So that's why can a country truly develop with a strong domestic infrastructure? No, because a strong country has of course has a strong domestic infrastructure such as China and then the USA and then furthermore, of course, I can't list all of them, but it is what happens. So citizens may question why governments invest billions overseas while domestic unemployment and poverty remain severe. So that's why most of the Indonesian people really need this opportunity instead of giving it away to the foreigners. And that's all for me.
Oh. In conclusion, and to answer a bit of their question about if oh, I'm so sorry. If I'm not mistaken, the government asked about if Indonesia's economic value is so low, how can we guarantee that the domestic industries can balance out Indonesia's economics? I'm just going to bring up the example of Lambu about how there was a time where he limited the amount of gas usage in Indonesia. After weeks or after months, I don't remember, the gas value in Indonesia increased significantly, which shows a domestic industry value and how powerful it is. And to empower my team even more, how domestic industrial protectionism has some similarities with Indonesia's nationalism. For example, the Rengas Depok, how the young generation kidnapped the presidents at that time to force them not to have any ties or any connections to the Japanese on their independence. This shows that Indonesia's nationalism can play a very big role in balancing out Indonesia's economy. And to show the industry. When the government brought up something about the Singaporeans, I'm just going to say that in this motion, Singapore is heavily out of the equation. Why? Singapore, even though they went through heavy investment losses, heavy investment losses, But Singapore is well known for its global tightness in the economic world. And since domestic industry also has ties with subsidies, Malaysia, even though Malaysia has its subsidies, if I'm not mistaken about the water bills and as well as something to do with marriage and their subsidies and their new homes. Even though that Malaysia is heavily domestic or heavily industrial domestic, Malaysia's passport is actually number sixth in the world, while Singapore is number 3rd in the world. And yes, Singapore is globally tight, but Malaysia, on the other hand, Malaysia is domestically tight. And to show how their passports surpass ours, show that if we focus more on domestic industries, it'll help us more. And yes, global connection is useful. Yes, global economic integration is useful for Indonesia. But if we take out domestic growth out of the equation, the result will be none. The result will be 0. And to restate again, the spirit of nationalism in Indonesia has evolved as an economic state of Indonesia. And that's all.
Honorable debaters, as a replies aware of the proposition, my anxiety is to crystallize today's debate and show why the proposition side has won. Okay, first, the opposition has argued that we don't have enough resources to export, and they also say that we could get influenced by the global culture. While with us, the proposition has demonstrated that we have a lot of resources to export. As I demonstrated before, we can export our agricultural products such as rice or any agricultural products or nature resources such as nickel or woods or even our textile. And they also say that we have to prioritize our country infrastructure. Yes, it is true, but what if our economy is not stable? How could we improvise our infrastructure? I mean, by we doing a partnership with global market, we can explore our resources. We can by that we can get funds or income for our country, and that income could be used for improving our infrastructure. And ladies and gentlemen, I will remind you that our stakeholders is the government. If we do a partnership with a global economy market, our government could reach more we could reach the international market, and we could do a partnership, and it could give us more benefits. It could give us what income. And for the citizens, if our economy is stable enough by doing the export, by receiving our income for doing the export, we could build the infrastructure